in the brick and mortar world, there was a lot of applications. There was applications for grants. There was applications to be a part of a group show or to get a solo show. And I was always soliciting galleries and museums to get my work seen. I was getting no's 95% of the time.
That takes so much resiliency.
Well, it's resiliency that you learn because the first couple ones stung, but the 100th no did not sting anymore. So once you go down that road and you realize I'm not made of cotton candy, I don't melt, I still believe in my work and I'm on my way, like to not be afraid of the internet, not be afraid of a no, not be afraid of rejection or judgment, and just push forward.
Hello, welcome to Emotional Badass, where Moxie meets mindful. I'm your host, Nikki Eisenhower, life coach and psychotherapist. And on today's episode, I'm interviewing Josie Lewis about how to become an artist, navigating our own imposter syndrome, and learning to embrace rejection. Josie Lewis grew up wild in the deep woods of northern Minnesota and became a declared visual artist as a teenager. Over the past few years, she's shipped over 13,000 packages of art and merchandise out of her home studio. She's posted daily art videos to social media, which have gained her over 3 million followers along the way. Josie helps others by coaching artists, both hobbyists and pros, with tutorials and courses through in-person workshops and online teachings. Remember to find Emotional Badass wherever you get your podcasts and hit that like and subscribe button so you can never miss an episode and get more videos like this in your feed. All right, so tell my audience what you do, because I found you because of your online presence, which I suspect is mostly how people find you because it is big and it is grand. So share a bit of your experience there, how you are on this internet.
So I'm a lifelong artist, the daughter of an artist. And I did the first part of my adult life, I did the standard brick and mortar approach. I went to art school and then I went to grad school. And then I was an art professor for a minute, and then I did galleries and, everything that you think of with an artist with, grants and stuff that you do in the real world. And then probably about 6 years ago, I found a hot streak on Instagram because I started to film my process of making paintings. And then my social media audience rapidly ballooned, and that really changed the whole character of what I do professionally.
What do you think as you have artists connect with you? Because I connected with you. Let me tell my audience that part of what I'm doing that I've never done before is I am producing my first art project. It is a deck of cards. I will tell you more as that project comes to fruition and comes to light. I will be excited to share that with you. And I wanted to consult with you because I don't have anybody in my art world. I think very often there are so many of us out there who didn't go that route. The route of I've been born to an artist. I know I'm an artist. I've always been an artist for so long in my life. I didn't think I was an artist. I had a grandpa that I thought of as the real artist. Like his kind of funny claim to fame was that he turned down a job as a cartoonist with Disney a million years ago because he thought, how the hell am I going to raise a family of 6 kids doodling and drawing things? Like, just didn't understand. So that was part of his story. And I thought he was an artist. And I thought my cousin was an artist. And I thought that was a space that I didn't fit into. And it was only many years later that I started these little pattern drawings. And I started having them in my office, my brick and mortar. And my therapy clients were the first people to look at me and go, "You're an artist. You're definitely an artist." So I had to receive those insights from my clients the way they receive them from me. And it's been a real change. I think there's such a bridge between I'm not an artist and I am an artist, and then the permission it takes to actually monetize your art and figure out where to go. Because I could do anything with my art, and what a gift, but also what a sticking point. When you interact with artists, like, what do you see as some of the holes that we fall into, the permissions we don't give ourselves? What do you think artists need to hear?
Yeah, I hear it all the time. I know friends that are making a full-time income as an artist, like a conventional painter, and they don't like calling themselves an artist. So there is this funny, I guess maybe you'd call it imposter syndrome that happens with folks that know their heart is telling them that they are here to create something. And yet somehow just claiming the term, like assigning it to yourself, feels too conceited, or, oh no, I'm not
pretentious, maybe
pretentious. There's something that prevents people from doing it. But I think deeper than that, I mean, there's probably many layers deeper. One is art scars, because somebody told us at some point that our art was bad, or that you can't make a living as an artist, or it's a waste of time. And so then we deeply internalize that stuff, especially when it happens when we're 14, or 9. And then we, just live out that story without even really examining it. Like, is that really true? And I hear that from people so often who wanted to be an art major, and their dad said, you can never make a living. You have to be a teacher or an accountant. And so then they do that. Mm-hmm. And they work their whole career. And as soon as the second they retire, they're like, I'm going to be an artist. So they spend a whole lifetime being very responsible. And then they finally are able to like take the plunge. So I say, take the plunge sooner, call yourself an artist. And it doesn't even matter if you don't make art. I think everybody should be an artist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it's so true and honoring of our real spirit. You put a little kid at the beach with some sand, they're an artist. There you go. Like, it doesn't have to be some kind of benchmark that we step into. We don't have to prove anything to claim, I think, the artistry of our human experience. You have a killer sense of humor that you bring into your TikToks, your Instagram. Was that intentional? Like, I want to know how you developed your style of connecting with your audience.
Well, I'm one of those more makes more kind of people. So I find that it's a really interesting investigative journey to find out what lands. And I think for professional artists like me and others, we're always, there's a thin razor wire that we're walking down, where on one side, there's our own creative inspiration and our private curiosities and the things that we love. And then on the other side is our relationship to audience. And, most people, thankfully, are just hobby artists. And I don't mean to say that in a pejorative way. I think being a hobby artist or an artist for pleasure is an amazing life choice. Like, that's amazing. And I ask people the serious question, like, would you rather? I mean, for a long time, I waited tables and made art. And my waitressing paid for my life. And then I just got to make the art that I wanted to make. And then at a certain point, when I decided to become professional, I had to start thinking about the audience. So then the thing that's amazing about social media is that I get real-time data on audience engagement within an hour of posting something. So that means I just get to test out a lot of content. And it does guide my practice, and really more than my practice, it guides my communication. So I find I don't really consider myself to be all that funny. And in fact, my husband laughs at me because he likes to watch comedy, like comics on stage, like the Netflix comedy specials. And I have just no patience for it. Although I've started now to watch comedy because I'm like, I guess I should, I think I kind of am one. So maybe I should watch these and learn something, So that it just turns out that being a little sarcastic and a little edgy in a comedic way really captures people's attention and creates an emotional spark. It works. So I've further investigated that line of content, delivery system, and it seems to be something that is effective.
It might sound like a small thing, but to me, it's a really big deal. And that's what I've learned and how I've grown watching you. Because I have a touch of the perfectionism, like so many who are listening, and I'm introverted. Like, I'm truly, truly introverted, but I want to get my message out there. So that conflict plus a touch of the perfectionism made me come at social media in such a rigid way where I'm trying to get it right, or I'm trying to get some kind of finished message product out there. And I want it so polished before it goes out there. And hearing you say this in different ways again and again in your content about like, this is a test. This is instant data. It's allowed it to be more of an experience and more of an experiment than some kind of final product. And I didn't even realize that that was the block I was having until I heard you teaching such concepts.
Well, I love that. I'm so glad that I'm so honored to have said anything at all that was helpful to you at any point.
Well, I think that's what you're doing for people. I think you have such a warmth and such an openness, and so many of us have really great artistic ideas, and we might be able to see, oh, I would like to sell this product, but the journey from that idea to actually figuring out, I mean, there's so much opportunity with putting our businesses online, but it's also really overwhelming and really overstimulating, and trying to figure out how to break through some of the algorithmic craziness is tricky. Do you just do what you want to do? Do you try to work the algorithm? Like, what is your process when you put something out?
Well, maybe backing up just a couple of steps before I was on the Instagrams, or social media, in the brick and mortar world, there was a lot of applications. There was applications for grants. There was applications to be a part of a group show or to get a solo show. And I was always soliciting galleries and museums to get my work seen, which is what the internet is, by the by. But that was the more conventional way to do it. And what I found is that I had about a 10% yes rate, which meant sometimes less, sometimes more like 5%, which meant I was getting no's 95% of the time, or just to be ignored altogether. Sometimes you didn't even get the courtesy of a no, you just got no answer.
That takes so much resiliency.
Well, it's resiliency that you learn, because the first couple ones stung, but the 100th no did not sting anymore. So once you go down that road and you realize I'm not made of cotton candy, I don't melt, I still believe in my work, and I am committed to the path that I'm on, and I'm not going to fall apart because somebody else doesn't give me the full acknowledgement that I want, then it's like, it stops mattering. It stops mattering if other people don't like what you're doing. I had a friend who took a job. He was very shy, very introverted, and also an incredibly brave person. And he took a job as a door-to-door salesman. I don't even know they had these anymore, but he took a job as a door-to-door salesman. I think he was even selling like encyclopedias or something. I mean, it just sounds ridiculous to me, but he took this job and he said, I took the job because I wanted to learn how to talk to strangers. And so he went door to door, and there's nobody that's more hated than a door-to-door salesman. And he learned what he said after a year of that. He quit the job and I think, went on to probably more rewarding careers. But he said, I learned to not be afraid of people. And that is, I still haven't mastered that one, but I'm on my way, to not be afraid of the internet, not be afraid of a no, not be afraid of rejection or judgment, and just push forward.
I mean, I hope people out there listening are really taking in what you're saying, because what you're naming is the cure for anxiety, really. And we can talk about anxiety with our therapists, and we can think about it, but rejection is its own therapy. And of course, we don't want to be rejected. No one wakes up in the morning like, yay, someone come along and reject me. But if we can understand this concept, our worlds open up. Our entire lives can change from this concept. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I mean it with every fiber of my being. Because can you hear what Josie's saying, y'all? She's saying she embraced the rejection until it didn't hurt anymore. Until it's just another leaf falling off a tree. It's just not a big deal. But you can't get there if you let anxiety scare you away from going through to get to the other side where there's more peace.
Well, I think an important part to this too is that you can't have courage unless you have fear. confidence means you feel pretty good about whatever it is you're about to do. Mm-hmm. Confidence means you've done it before, or you possibly could be telling yourself a story about your capabilities. But mostly, if you have true confidence, is because you've done it and you can do it again. If you have courage, it means you don't know what the results are and you don't know what's going to happen and you do it anyway. And so you take action in the face of uncertainty, which, being alive.
Yes. Yes. Almost every day of our lives.
At which, we could lock ourselves in our closet, I guess, and never do anything and never speak to anyone, which has its own problems. But everything we do is going to be, there's uncertain outcomes.
And risk. I think that's a big secret to life that nobody really tells us. Like, we're going to have to risk again and again and again and again. I mean, till you're so sick of risking, you don't even care anymore. And so what I'm hearing you say is, all right, artists, you need to have courage. And from that courage, the more that you face yourself, the world, rejection, you will grow into your confidence.
Yes. Yeah. You'll start to discover. I mean, I like to think of, especially going back to the social media discussion, I like to think of my experience at putting myself out into the world and seeing the results that come back as investigatory rather than something that's telling me about my worth and value as a human. I mean, we know that, we say that, like, I know that if I don't get likes on Instagram, that I'm still a good person, but we don't feel that.
Yes.
But for me, if I can shift from feeling like it's a value judgment to feeling like it's neutral information that can help me to make the next move, to plan the next move, that's very helpful. So there's nothing that gives you as much data as Instagram or social media. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of data there if you are putting the content out there. If somebody comes to me and they're like, well, I posted 4 times and nobody liked it. It's like, well, that's not enough. Sorry, you got to put more efforts out there to start to get some data back, and then you can start to make decisions about next future moves.
So if somebody's first getting out there and they're wanting to jump in, what kind of advice do you have for them?
So are we thinking of a creative person that wants to share their art with the world? Is that kind of the person we're talking to?
Yes, ma'am.
So I would say it's a volume game. There's an amazing famous story about a pottery class where the instructor said half the group is going to be graded on one pot, and you'll get an A or you'll get an F based on your one pot. And the other half of the group will get graded on the volume of pots that they can make in the semester. Well, who do you think made the best work? Clearly the people who made volume, because they just got really good at it, and they failed over and over and over and over again, and they developed their own style. And this is an important part too. I don't think you can come up with a voice and a style unless you're putting a lot of stuff out there. I think that we kind of craft our voice and our unique identity by making stuff and putting our voice out and creating content and repetition over time. It's the only way to do it, as opposed to theoretics. Like, you could sit around and think, well, what does the best pot look like? How do we determine what the most beautiful pot is and make the one, which is just in your head.
I think it's a problem in our time. I think we're living through a great information age with the internet. And I think that's bugging people out. They're like, oh, if I think about something enough, that will get me forward motion, right? No, incorrect. It is doing an action. Even getting out of depression is a doing. It's not a thinking. It's a doing. I can attest to that. I mean, the way that I put out an episode now and the way I feel about it, I have such a comfort level. That first year of putting out a weekly episode, I felt anxious, like I was going to throw up every time I released something. And it took that long. It really did. It took a year, maybe even closer to the 2-year mark, for me to find a comfortability in me putting myself out there that way. So more.
And how many years have you been making your podcast?
We're in the 7th, so 6 solid years.
So if you listen back to year 1, I bet you hear a lot of things you do different now. tech
I
stuff.
sound like a podcast baby to myself. Yes. Like it's hard for me to like stick my finger on what it is, but I can hear my nerves. I can hear how green I am. I can hear that even when I think I feel solid or sound solid to other people, that I am not solid in those moments. I can tell. So I think that's part, even as a therapist, like part of what I like bringing to my clients that I have a long-term relationship with is, hey, remember 3 years ago where you were? How different are you now? And to be able to put content out like this, not just think about how I was, but actually go back and look, actually go back and hear it, and visually and sound wise hear and see how I'm different. I mean, that's the proof that doing makes us better. And that's what motivates me to keep going, to see where I can get.
Well, and the fact is too, you don't know what you don't know. So you took the big leap, you committed to it for 7 years and onward, and you are getting better every time. every episode, you're learning more about how to do an interview or how to speak coherently or all the things that you think about as a creator. And one of the things I recently had an experience which would be a good illustration in this moment. I had to buy a car, which is not my favorite thing. My old car was a 2006. So I've been driving that car for quite, I didn't buy it new, but I've been driving it for a long time. So it was on its last leg. We knew we had to get another car. And it unearthed so much perfectionism and childhood baggage. I mean, it was crazy, everything that this car shopping experience unpacked for me. And one of the things that I realized at some point, I was talking to my friend's dad, who are often a wonderful wealth of knowledge. And he said, well, here's this thing about cars, you just don't know. You make the best choice you can make. You figure out what your budget is, and you don't know if that's going to be a good car. You don't know if you're going to like it. You don't know if it's going to be mechanically sound. You just try and move forward based on faith. It was like, oh, right. And he's like, think about all the cars you've owned. How many of them have been great and how many of them have been horrible? And it's like, yeah, it's about half and half. You didn't die. I mean, thankfully, I didn't die because, of course, we know that cars can kill us, but I didn't die and I didn't melt and I somehow survived. And maybe I lost some money on a car and then I got another one. And, so it's like, oh, the relative importance of that decision is similar to the relative importance of putting yourself out on social media. You think it feels like life or death, but actually it's just this one thing, and you will fail. I will fail without a doubt. I don't know everything, and I don't know what I don't know. And you just make decisions and do the best you can.
I also think there's a shift that happens when you get enough content out there that people just can't know until they get there. And maybe it's unique to me, but maybe you resonate with us. And I'm a recovering people pleaser. So I knew putting myself out there is where the rubber meets the road. I'm inviting nasty internet people to comment at me. Someone said to me, putting yourself out there on the internet is a bit like taking all your clothes off and standing on a busy street corner. I thought, yeah, it is like that. It does feel like that. And I think when I came into it, I think now when I can look back and realize that I think I brought a very almost like first day of high school energy to me, putting myself out there on the internet. Like, here I am, ready to get judged. Go. And it's only after putting out a ton of content that something started to shift. And I started to realize in a way that I might have known, but the feelings started to shift so that I could actually feel what I knew, that as much as this feels like the whole world, this is just the internet. And it's almost like being in a school where you could walk in a classroom and then walk out of a classroom and shut a door. All you really have to do is turn that app off and get out of there and leave. And it doesn't matter if everybody's screaming at you or mad, everybody thinks you're stupid, everybody thinks you put your foot in your mouth, whatever internet spider web you tripped into. it's okay. It doesn't matter. And 10 minutes later, the internet will move on to the next thing. Just keep going. But something kind of shifted and turned, like I'm turning my hand. If you're watching me on video, you can't see me if you're just on radio. But something really shifted where that just kind of solidified for me. Did you have any of that experience?
Well, I think what happened to me, yes, 100%. And also another thing that happened to me is that I found out that going viral doesn't really matter very much.
Yeah.
So, I would get 10 million views and loads of mad people.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think, oh, surely I'm going to sell some art or something will happen.
Yeah.
But really, I'd get some mad people, I'd get some happy people. And then in a wink of an eye, it'd be over. And nothing really happened. So it's almost like I think the lesson there for me was you put out content that flops, nobody really sees it and it doesn't matter. You put out content that hits and nobody remembers it and it doesn't matter. It's cumulative and the accumulations are very small. And the only way to build up something is over time with lots of deposits. And it doesn't matter if they flop or if they succeed because everything's just a tiny drop in the bucket.
I think what you're saying probably shocks a lot of this audience that doesn't have an online presence because it's something that's hit me that I've been as much as top 10 in mental health in my podcast. So people think I'm making like Joe Rogan podcasting money. Like that's not happening, y'all. I've had things go viral now on Instagram, and it is interesting to expect some kind of wave of, wow, that's more eyes and ears than ever before. And what happened? Nothing. It's really hard to imagine. And you were the first person online that I've ever heard acknowledge that. That you said, oh, I've had things go massively viral on TikTok. I have millions of followers. And I've heard you say, and I have sold nothing on TikTok.
True facts.
So this accumulation that you're talking about, can you talk about more of what that means?
So it's an accumulation and it's looking for markers of very specific things, which have to do with engagement. Because I actually am interested in developing a community of people that think of me as their personal celebrity. There's a great term by Seth Rogen. He says that we can become famous to the family. So a lot of my artists that I coach, they say, Josie, it's only friends and family that buy my art. And I'm like, well, guess what? Here's the big news. It's always friends and family that buy your art. It's just that our circle gets bigger as we develop our audience and our reputation. So there are artists, I imagine, that can makes the spontaneous sales. People that wander by at a craft fair or something and are like, oh my gosh, I need this. But I think mostly, especially higher market art, is done in relationship. It used to be that the galleries would have the relationships, and so then they would connect with their art buying patrons. But now artists connect directly with people that might buy art. And, in marketing, they say it usually takes 15 to 20 touches of a product before someone considers buying it. That's absolutely the case with artists, even more so. So I think that with artists, there's probably a bit of education work that needs to be done to just show people what your art is about. And then it's just continual contact points over time to create that audience so that people, when I run into people and they say, oh my gosh, Josie, art police, I know I've done my work. I know I've done my job. Or they mention something specifically that I've done offline, because then it's like, okay, great. And what they don't know is that I have produced 450 art police, like a very large volume. They've seen 3 of those, but it worked. It worked for them. And then they connect with me and they connect with the concept. And then therefore I have created a community member, someone that is now like part of my group and part of my culture or something. And that person, I wish I had direct data. to know, like, how many people have seen and liked the art police and then also bought art.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that number, but I bet it's high. I bet it's very high. I bet people connect to me personally for whatever reason, and then they're much more likely to want to make a purchase with me.
I love your art police videos. They are some of my favorite. Will you tell my audience like what they are?
Sure. So I was so used to getting so many snotty people on the internet, and I thought that was really funny. So I created an art police character who's the art police 911 operator, and she takes emergency calls from people who are really mad about art that they think is bad. And so she helps them to become more judgmental and to further crush artists' soul. So it's satire. It's satire.
There's such a brilliance to what you're sharing, because so many people struggle to take what is nasty out there in the world and make it something else. Like I say a lot, we have to take shit and make it fertilizer, and you fertilized it with the art police. And I think that's part of your resiliency. It's part of your sense of humor. And I think that's what translates to the realness that you offer that makes people connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think once again, I did it and it discovered that it worked. People emotionally connected with me, and that was fun and satisfying. And it also, I think, also connected to a thread in people's own souls that they realize instinctively is true. That like, oh yeah, there are a lot of snotty people out there, but I don't really need to listen to them,
And I don't need to be the snotty art police to myself either.
Exactly. And I think the most important thread of art police is that a lot of times we have an art police in our own souls, and we give ourselves, a lot of crap about what we're doing. And that's the part that I think is hopefully the most profound and helpful for people. Like, wait a second, I don't let my uncle say this to me, and I also don't let myself say this to me.
Yes, that inner critic. Yeah, it's so sneaky, and it likes to comment on everything that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're really big on artists monetizing, charging for their art. Why do you think it is such a big obstacle? Why is it so hard for us to create something, put a price on it, and then look someone in the face and say, yes, this is the price of my art? Like, why is that one of the hardest things ever?
There's nothing as vulnerable as that, because it's kind of like putting our heart out there and putting a price tag on it. And then to talk about rejection, if somebody determines to not buy it or you can't sell it, then it really, really feels personal. It really feels personal. And I know a lot of very, very talented, prolific, mature artists that aren't able to get their work out into the world because they don't like the feeling of rejection. And it's just kind of part of it. Like, it's just kind of part of it. So that's one thing. And then also, I would also say about that that leap from an artist, a casual artist maker, a weekend warrior, someone who is just making art for the emotional benefits and their own pleasure, to, okay, now I want to make art and sell it. It's a really big leap, and it shouldn't be done lightly, because that the life of just making art for fun, writing in your journal, tinkering around on the piano, is a beautiful life. It's really, really beautiful. It's really fun and satisfying to make art just for ourselves and our own pleasure, because there's such a tremendous reward in flow and in the process and in the learning and the emotional regulation that you can get with art. And then taking that step to become an artist that's, hanging your shingle out and saying, okay, now I want to sell this stuff, is A, vulnerable, and B, it's like a whole new skill set, because becoming an artist that also is business savvy is not something that our culture teaches. I went to 7 years of art college, and they never taught me a thing about business. Not a thing.
A therapist, and same thing. The only way therapists really make a good living is working for themselves. And there was zero business advice. And it's the same for therapists. So many therapists that go into private practice are so uncomfortable saying, and this is the price to sit with me for an hour, that they just won't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, there's that tightrope that I was talking about earlier, that as soon as you become a professional artist, there's skills you have to learn, which it's small business skills are not rocket science. It's not a shocking amount of information you need to know, but it is, sometimes there's some leaps there's some teaching that needs to be consumed and some research that needs to be done. And then what I think is even more tricky for people is to figure out that dance with the audience, to remain authentic to their own voice and vision, but then also be responsive, because the market doesn't tell any lies. The market, if your art doesn't sell, it's because nobody wanted it. And it's not to say that your art isn't good. It's just to say that either you're not presenting it correctly, or it's not the right moment, or it's not the right audience. There's a number of things that are happening. It's complicated is what I'm saying. So making art for yourself on your kitchen table is a beautiful life. It's very simple. And then when you take the leap to wanting to sell it, it's a different world. And it takes a real soul of like kind of relentless courage to be able to do it.
Relentless courage. I mean, I could make the argument that that's kind of a requirement for a good life too, is to just keep bringing a relentless courage to it. So many people listening are highly sensitive people. And I think they really hold this dilemma in their hearts about both wanting to lean into whatever flavor of entrepreneurship calls to them, whether it's creatively or something else. But that leap, I think a lot of us hold voices in our head like, who do we think we are? Who do you think you are to be able to do that? When I first hung my first shingle, she's now my ex-mother-in-law, but I had a mother-in-law who said to me, "Why do you think you can do that?" And my God, it would have hurt less if she cursed me out. It was so cutting. It had the potential to absolutely pop my balloon, and I had to know not to let it. So I think it takes us a whole lot of continued self-sufficiency, a whole lot of recalibrating to, hey, what did I want? What do I want for me? There's endless possibilities in this world, and I give myself permission to step up into those possibilities and wave my hand. I think a lot about the term like taking time, taking space. It's like there's so much in life that we have to just kind of step up and take. And I think sensitive people, they don't like that. They kind of resent that. They don't want to be that active. And I think passivity here doesn't really work. So a lot of what I'm hearing you talk about is be active for yourself, be assertive for yourself, lean in, embrace rejection until it no longer hurts. And you're going to get to where you're going because you just won't stop.
One of the things that I hear a lot from my artists is their desire to be authentic. And when I am telling them to make content on social media and to alter it based on the feedback and the data that they're getting back in, that makes them feel like they're not being authentic. So I have an analogy that I think is helpful and might speak to some of the things you just brought up, which is, when I write in my journal, I don't care about spelling. I don't care about run-on sentences. I don't care about like jotting a grocery list in the corner. It's just for me and my own processing. And it's purely my own desire. Whatever I want to do in my journal, I can do. If I'm writing a letter, I think quite a bit about punctuation and spelling and making sure that my sentences make sense and the gist of what I'm trying to say is clear. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that the letter is less authentic than my journal? Like, I would argue no. Yep. The journal is authentic to a degree, but it's very personal and private. The letter is written with the recipient in mind. And so I think that authenticity, there's a lot of different ways to be authentic. And I think that sensitivity is sort of like that. Like we can utilize our sensitivity as artists for sure. And then also our intuitive sensitivity with our audience that's similar to that writing that letter.
Oh, I really like that. I really, really like that. I typically relate it to clothing that, you're not just authentically you when you're like in the shower and you're naked. We don't go outside and go, look at this inauthentic person with their clothing on, just covering themselves up. It's so funny to me, the ways that we convince ourselves to play small.
Yeah, that one hits for sure. It's not authentic, so I don't feel like I can post to social media like, oh, really? Is that really why? Is that really why?
Yeah. My excuse before I got on social media was, I didn't like it. It didn't feel human to me. And someone said to me, another coach, those algorithms work with humans. They're reading humans. Like it's what the humans want. And I was like, oh, I can't have that excuse anymore. Thank you very much.
They're very sensitive to reading humans, very, very good at it.
So tell the audience, like, what do you have going on? If they want to come hang out with you, what are some of the ways they can come play with you?
So I have sort of three groups. One group are the art appreciators that come to my social channels for satisfying art content. Mm-hmm. So if, whether somebody was, an aspiring artist or not, they could come to my channel and spend a good solid hour watching my videos. I make these videos that are just real colorful and watchable. And then my second group are people that want to make art. And so that's probably my largest group. So I have lots of art tutorial courses. And of course, there's the YouTube channel with longer videos. And right now I have a membership called Art Heart Academy that it just includes every art course that I've ever made. It's like over 100 different tutorials and it's super cheap. It's $11. So if anybody wants to join, that's an easy one. Loads and loads of teaching about art. And then I also have something that a coaching program that I do for artists who want to sell, and that's called Art Revenue Coaching. And then that's a membership as well.
Awesome. Awesome. What I really like about your work is it's very practical. And I think that's how my mind works. I think I bring a practicality to mental health, and I like how you bring practical, doable tips. I took your course about how to price your art, and I found it not just useful, but the exact right amount of information that I can digest to be able to learn something. So it didn't feel like too little and it didn't feel like too much. And for me, that was just a very lovely, sweet spot that you hit for me.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Is there anything else you want to say before we close up and say goodbye?
I love this message of taking action and doing it afraid and stepping out, because it's the sad news is that you just keep having to learn it. You just keep having to learn it, and there's new levels and new devils. So you just keep going. And so, what I'm talking about here about like being afraid, doing it afraid, it never goes away. There's like layers of mastery. There's some things that I feel very confident about that I didn't used to feel confident about, but plenty of things that I don't know what the F I'm doing. And I'm just trying to get by.
That's a beautiful place for us to end. Thank you so much for sharing yourself, your wisdom, your smile, all the things with me.
It's been a pleasure.
I want to thank Josie Lewis for being on the show today, for sharing herself with us. You can visit her website at josielewis.com and any of the social media platforms at Josie Lewis Art. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for being out there listening. Hit that subscribe button, y'all. The more subscribers we get, the more our content will be put in front of so many other people. Thank you so much for hitting that subscribe button and helping us grow and thrive. Light and love to all of you. I am an emotional badass. You are an emotional badass. And together, we are where Moxie meets mindful. Light and love, and I'll see you right here for a brand new episode or on our Patreon for some exclusive content. Till next time, take care. Bye-bye.